Good afternoon, Michael Malice here, and let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us, this has been a long time coming. Probably the person I agree with the most politically.
It's dangerous.
Co-host of the Fifth Column, the man himself, Kmele Foster.
Thank you for having me, Malice.
I
appreciate it.
Ecstatic that you're here.
I'm delighted to be here, to be seen. It's been a very long, rough summer. We haven't seen each other in months, if not like a year or more. It's been a while.
Yeah, guys never invited me on to promote my book.
Oh my God. I've been under a rock and I was barely making the podcast during those moments, but I did just finish reading your book. I'm slightly embarrassed to acknowledge that it's taken me a very long time to do so, but I did.
I got the weirdest text.
Even to see the thank you of me at the very end.
Well, you also mentioned the beginning.
I know, but that I knew already. You told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great quotes in the book because it's absolutely terrific. And you wrote this. You're like, hey, this is my favorite quote. On our way to Charlottesville, we stopped at Cracker Barrel for breakfast. I had never seen a bowl of white gravy before, and it moved like pus and had a similar texture, actually nauseating me. That's really the pithy one.
The quote is great because it's quintessential Malice. It's sort of apropos of nothing. Like, I'm telling you about Charlottesville. I'm talking about the concern that I have going into this situation.
Yeah.
And we stopped at the Cracker Barrel. And I saw this bowl of white gravy, and it made me nauseous. It's the sort of aside that you absolutely need and don't know that you need in the context of this story.
You know,
that is why I loved it so much. And as I've told you before, when I was reading like Ego and Hubris, I was on a flight someplace, I don't remember where, that I read it after knowing you for a very long time. And it felt like I'd spent the entire flight with you. And it was just like, this is fantastic. And in much the same way, reading the book, like there were all of these little things. I could hear it in your voice, not only because I was doing something that I'm slightly embarrassed to admit that I do, but I read books and listen to the narration simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
Like doing both things. And it's off and on because oftentimes I'm doing like other stuff. But last night I should have been sleeping at 2:00 in the morning. And instead I'm listening to you talk to me and reading the book. But even if I wasn't listening, I could hear it in your voice. Like I know the things that you're likely to say. So it's wonderful to be able to spend that time with you and to be able to interact with you in that way. It's unadulterated Malice, which is why I loved that particular quote.
Oh, it was adulterated. They cut some things.
Well,
which we'll get to in a second.
That's a whole different thing.
I'm going to pretend that quote was about foreshadowing my nausea at Charlottesville, but until you mentioned it, I never thought of it in that context.
I didn't presume you had.
No,
I didn't presume that was the case. I actually thought, and the reason it was so rich and wonderful to me is because it's like, you don't need this detail, but it's wonderful that it's there.
The one thing they cut from the book, I had a section on inappropriate humor.
Oh.
And I had a joke, which I'm very proud of, where I said, you have to know your audience when you're telling jokes. Mm-hmm. You're not going to tell a room full of kindergartners jokes about fellatio, no matter how good they are at it, because they won't know the term. And the editor was like, oh, it sounds like you're saying the comedian isn't good at fellatio. Whatever. And I'm like, leave it. Stet. You just say stet. And it got through 4 rounds and they called in backup and they're like, you have to cut this. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to bring it up every chance I get. Is that better for you? I mean, there's a crib death joke, there's Holocaust jokes.
It's a funny joke.
It's a funny joke.
It works because it does what a joke is supposed to do. It's absurd. It sort of shocks the senses. This is how jokes work.
Right.
That's okay.
Yes. Yes. Wait, so you had all this stuff you want to talk about. You wanted to save it for the air. So
did I? Oh, well, no, I just wanted to say that I love the book. As I said, it was like spending time with you. But what I really like about the book, and I'm thinking about what I said to you before you embarked on this journey, which made it into the book, that you were flying close to the sun. And I'd forgotten that I'd asked you like why you would want to talk to these people. But in retrospect, and certainly having just finished reading it, I totally get it. I mean, there are a couple of things about you that I really like. One is you are sort of boundlessly curious and you're genuinely interested in getting to know other people's perspective and to sort of figure out the psychology that leads them to the conclusions that they arrive at. I think you're incredibly generous to people who have what people would generally regard as disreputable perspectives.
Oh, yes.
There's a willingness to, again, understand you on a human level, to try and engage with you and to persuade you that maybe that's not a reasonable perspective because you think that there's actually some opportunity for redemption there.
For
almost
some.
like a Christian missionary in that respect. But I also think that there's something about you where you are sort of self-reflective and you're willing to interrogate your own ideas. And I think a lot of the reason why people won't sit down and across from like an avowed racist, someone who holds filthy ideas that are not supposed to be aired, isn't only because they're afraid of what other people will say about them. They don't have the actual courage of their convictions that they ought to have. And because they're unwilling to expose themselves to those dangerous things, they can't dare try to talk to these people to rescue them. I think subconsciously or not, for fear that they might actually be outclassed, shown to be wrong, or perhaps completely proven wrong, and that find themselves sort of ensnared in whatever trap it is that this person has for them. And I appreciate that was the nature of the project. And as I was reading it, I thought to myself about all of the people I know who are sort of vehemently opposed to the alt-right. And in some cases for genuinely good reasons.
Sure.
Like they're concerned about the excesses and the ways that it might lead them towards some other sort of extreme fanatical ideology. But your book, quite frankly, is the best inoculate against that, because it actually attempts to understand them on like a human level, not overly complimentary, just like they're people. And they're people who've reached these perspectives for understandable and discernible reasons. They're not completely fucking crazy. They're not all abject racist. And even the ones who are racist, like you can talk to them and you can level with them. And I think that's something I hope that you and I have in common. It's something that I've come to realize about myself. Particularly, I most notice it in the context of like gay marriage and homosexuality and issues related to that, because I grew up in a both Christian and Jamaican household.
Oh, yeah.
And there is sort of a double dose of homophobia in a circumstance like that. And it's only relatively recently, I can say, I mean, I'm almost 40 now, so it's a little less recent now, thankfully. But in my almost adult life, where I started to confront my...
I'm not comfortable taking a dick.
No, well, I mean, I've never tried it, but I won't knock it. It might be good for somebody else. Perhaps it's even good for me. I will never know, because I'm a monogamist. I'm boring and vanilla in that respect. But, you know, I've at least confronted those demons, and I've come out on the other side of it as someone who, like, to the extent you're uncomfortable with someone else's gay relationship, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? If they're not actively trying to sleep with you, it's generally not any of your business.
It's also okay to think gay sex is gross.
Totally fine.
And be like, you know what? You guys love each other, go do what you want. I think it's gross what you do in the bedroom, but what most people do in the bedroom is gross. Right? Two fatties going at it, it's not gross.
Maybe I'm wondering about what you just said. Perhaps you're right. On average, the average person, I'm not interested in seeing them have sex. But there is an upper echelon of person who I'm like, yeah, I'd like to watch that. I might even want to participate. I'm just saying, like, some very attractive people like this. That's cool. Whoa. So I never knew it could bend that way.
So who are these hunks that you want to have sex with? Matt Wells?
Matt doesn't make the list. I'm sorry. And I think I'm on record as being maybe 10% gay. Like Ryan Gosling and I, that could be a thing. I mean, we would hold hands.
See, that's Ryan Gosling is feminine. It is beautiful. That's the other thing. It's
so like, I'm a bear. You have a problem with that?
You're not a bear.
I'm not.
You're not a bear at all.
Why not? I have like a knit cap on and a beard. That's not
you have
like
a beard.
There's a beard there. Look at that.
If you have a beard, that means your wife.
Oh. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know
the rules.
No, you don't. Okay.
I don't know the rules of any of this.
A beard is when a gay man has a public relationship. That's his beard.
Oh, well, yeah, that I know. But, you know, coming from where I come from, it's a down low.
But there's a lot of that in Jamaica. And
this
that
is
culture.
In the black community, broadly speaking, yeah.
And this was a problem with the spread of AIDS because they didn't identify as gay.
It is still a problem.
Yeah.
Yep. There are still elevated rates of HIV and AIDS in the African-American community relative to other populations, which, again, is another example of a disparity in our society that might get passed off as, oh my God, see all of the evidence of white supremacy all around us, but can be chalked up to something that is understandable if we're actually curious about the complex world that we live in.
But getting back to something you said, that was part of the reason, and I said that explicitly in like the first, second chapter, why I wrote the book, is a lot of these guys, one of my quotes is, you take one red pill, not the whole bottle, unless you have someone they're drifting, right? Yeah. And unless you have someone grab them by the collar, they're going to end up all the way to, full blown whatever.
Right.
And what else is funny is every scene, there's two sides, right? So people think it's Republican versus Democrat. Then you get within the Republicans, you have Jeb versus Trump. Then within Trump, and I was just thinking about this yesterday, even the full-blown anti-Semites, right? Which is as far as it's going to get. There's two groups that absolutely hate each other. So there's one group who think everything is about the Jews. It's only the Jews, the JQ, right?
Yeah.
There's the other group who's like, this is a baby bathwater situation. Like, Jews cause a lot of harm, but there's clearly lots of Jews who are on the level.
Right.
And the first group thinks the other is complete naive. And the second group thinks the first group is completely stupid and you're making us look like idiots.
Yeah.
So it's just even in that, and with anarchists, right? We have Team Helicopter versus Team Woodchipper. This is a huge divide about what we're going to do when the revolution comes. That's the mechanism. Helicopters are expensive, but it, looks cooler.
There's a category of person who might hear what you just said about the different kinds of anti-Semites and wonder to themselves why it even matters, why there ought to be any sort of distinction made, because there's such a tendency to engage in these categorical condemnations of people, like these thoughtless, oh my God, that's racist, oh my God, that's anti-Semitic, without trying to get beneath the surface of what you mean when you say that. And as I believe you said in the book, but I know that we broadly agree on, like, to say something is racist in a contemporary context is largely to mean, I think in most contexts in which it's used, I don't like that thing.
Yeah, it's not progressive.
It's the bad kind of thing. But not specifically, oh, you believe that there is a racial hierarchy and that people of this particular phenotypic characteristic bucket are worse than those other ones.
Well, they have their own word, the alt-right. They have degenerate. Degenerate means I don't like it.
Yeah.
It means racist. It's the same word.
Yeah. So I don't know what the hell I was going with that. It's fine.
No, it's just, I mean, you ask why you would have these distinctions because one is who... If you take one from the second group, baby bathwater, and bring him to dinner or a party at your house, he's not going to be a jackass. Yeah, he's also someone where you could have a conversation who is going to be persuadable. Right. Whereas anyone of any political persuasion who thinks everything can be reduced to one issue, there's no mind there. Yeah, you'll never be able to get him to see, because it's just like a switch. Yeah. Abortion, it's about the Jews. This about the Jews. It's like, okay, I can't talk to you. Right.
So that is the case where you presume that there's just no hope for this person.
Well, but that's also
not presume. But also, in your experience, there isn't a great deal of hope for that.
It's the same thing with these people who are like, oh, the Democrats. It's like, okay, we had a Republican president, Republican Congress. Was it Nirvana? Was America amazing under George W. Bush or the first Trump 2 years? Like, what are you talking about?
Oftentimes they delude themselves into believing that it was.
No, they don't. They're like, no, they say, well, those were rhinos. I'm like, okay, so it's not Democrat versus Republican. It's like only Republicans who agree with you, who there's three. So like, what are you even talking about?
I mean, when I see manifestations of that same dynamic in Brooklyn, and when I say see, I mean over here casually in the coffee shop every damn day, it's usually someone talking about like the Obama years and how fantastic everything was. And I'm sometimes 20% of the time I find myself injecting myself into other people's conversations and just screwing with their minds a little bit. I've often been tempted to wear a MAGA hat around Brooklyn at Park Slope just to fuck with people. Like just because I'm not a MAGA not, but God, it'd be fun just to screw with them because they deserve it. Yeah. But most of the time when they talk about the Obama years, it's with this longing. It was wonderful and it was extraordinary. And the degree to which it actually didn't live up to expectations, the degree to which he didn't do the things that were promised is never actually brought up. They don't confront it. When I force them to confront it, usually they're so shocked and surprised that anyone is challenging them, especially here in Brooklyn, that they don't respond. And even when I push them, they kind of seem to genuinely believe that all was right with the world.
You and I both have a very kind of skeptical view of politics in America. Yes. What are you most concerned will happen in 2020?
I am somewhat concerned about the sort of coalescing around populist ideas. Yeah. The fact that there is a genuine harmony, I think, amongst Trump supporters and Bernie Sanders, Warren supporters in terms of their instincts toward populism. I am afraid of that, coalescing around a candidate, really energizing a candidate, and actually gaining some momentum in Congress and resulting in some really bad policy that has nasty unintended consequences.
What do you see as the problem with populism in a nutshell?
Destroying the goose that lays the golden egg.
Burning down. Okay.
It's just the short-sightedness that they don't understand the difference between wealth and income. They're obsessed with wealth disparities at the complete expense of an actual conversation about the things that actually improve our lives, like productivity gains, prosperity, actual wealth creation. If I have to choose between Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos being 20 million times wealthier than me or you or anybody else, and all of us getting 10 times wealthier, this is an easy fucking choice. A politics of envy where you're simply just most concerned about knocking down the people at the top as opposed to genuinely doing something to improve everyone's lives. Like you can't necessarily have both of those things, and there's no curiousness about the second category of things. No one cares about wealth creation anymore, and I think there's a lack of a belief in ourselves, so great a concern about the uncertainty of the future that we're unwilling to engage with that most important question. Like, how we got here is phenomenally important.
Yeah.
How did we actually get to the level of prosperity we enjoy today? That's a story that should be told over and over again. It's a question that people should be obsessing over, and we don't talk about it at all.
Hey guys, Michael Malice here. Let me tell you about Sheath Underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use code Malice, you get 30% off. What is Sheath Underwear? They're very smart. They gave me a bunch to wear, and I have been wearing it. So here's what it does. It's multi-directional fabric, which sculpts precisely to the body. If you've been doing your squats like I have, trust me, you're going to enjoy this underwear. If you haven't, you'll enjoy it too. Moisture wicking, cooling, stretchy, breathy, incredibly comfortable. They have traditional boxer briefs, but here's what they have. You have to try this. They have a brief with a dual pouch for your upstairs and downstairs that keeps everything separated and in place, which is great for high heat environments or intense physical activities. And if you wear this underwear with tight jeans, you're going to thank me for it. A lot of athletes wear this. It's great underwear for everyone. If you go to sheathunderwear.com, SHEATH underwear.com, and use code Malice use code Malice, you get 30% your entire order. And you can wear the same underwear as me. I like the black ones. Speaking of which, let's get back to the show. We got a question from the chat room.
Oh.
And it's Shade.
Oh, boy.
On fifth column, every time the topic comes up, Moynihan takes over and tries to talk shit over Trump the whole time.
Which topic?
Hold on. So it's pretty rare we hear Camille's thoughts without interruption every 5 seconds. On the topic of politics and Trump in general.
Yeah.
I want to hear... because it's funny when someone who you agree with independently come to the same conclusions. Your thoughts on the late, great Kamala Harris. Yeah.
So we're not going to talk about Trump, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is probably my least favorite Democratic candidate from the current field. I guess the field is dwindling, but the current round of electoral politics for the president of the United States. She's smug. She's pretentious. She's the most phony of phony. She's willing to take. She is the political opportunist. There's this popular consensus about her seriousness and her impressiveness as a political candidate, but it's all smoke and mirrors. And when you actually look beneath the surface, when you take a look at the biography, the fucking resume, the fact that she had a political appointment where she was making $75,000 a year. It's like a part-time employee, a job that was given to her by the guy she was dating at the time, the political kingmaker in California. I mean, she's just the most grotesque of people. And I haven't even begun to talk about her actual track record as a prosecutor, a woman who thought it was the most important thing that she could do was be like a truant cop who was busting parents whose kids weren't making it to school on time, or who was responsible for convicting all of these people and sending them to jail on bullshit drug charges. And I say bullshit because she can sit behind a microphone not too far from here in New York City talking to Charlemagne and laugh about having smoked weed in college, which may in fact have been a lie. But in either case, Actually, she was definitely lying in some respect.
Yes.
Maybe she hasn't done weed before. I wouldn't believe that. But when she locked so many people away for doing the exact same same thing she's laughing about, that everything about her from a political standpoint is what is wrong with our politics. These phony ass people who are supposed to be respectable and thoughtful and erudite. It seems to me that she's none of those things. The only thing that she's particularly good at, so far as I can tell, is being a shapeshifter.
That's careful. That's a loaded word.
I know. I figure it's safe here. But she's deplorable, and I was delighted to see her exit the race because I was actually a little terrified that she might win, that she might catch fire.
Did you see what I hope she does catch fire.
It's not too late.
Did you see? Yeah, that was my quote. If there's one thing a Hawaiian knows how to do, it's how to roast a pig.
And she did get her.
And did you see what I did last week to celebrate Kamala Harris being lost?
Oh, the pork thing.
Yeah, I had everyone chip in, and I bought all these fancy hams, and I had a ham tasting to celebrate. Because I have another tweet that went wide, which is, and I completely believe this, Kamala Harris is by far the most evil sociopath on that Democratic stage. No one's even close to her.
I'd say that's about right.
And the other reason why is there's a lot of shit you could say about Joe Biden. He's a party hack, whatever, blah, blah. To go on that stage and accuse him of being a closet racist,
it's absurd.
It's despicable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's you're full of shit. Yeah. Here's the other thing. I would be happy if she were like a Giuliani Law and Order type who's like, I had to lock these people up, own it.
Yeah.
She did it purely to further her career. That is evil. To imprison people just to get ahead politically, as opposed to like, no, this is the right thing to do. That's why you're a monster.
Yeah. And whatever her motives were, when confronted with the facts about this, she tries to spin everything.
Yeah. Well, what are you supposed to say?
Detestable.
Yes.
But I hate everything about presidential politics, as I generally hate our politics.
No, you don't. You enjoy the fun.
I enjoy the circus.
Yes, and you enjoy how these people are humiliated.
Yeah, sure.
Increasingly.
Yeah, that's good. You're right. You're pointing out the things that I do like. I hate all of the things that other people take seriously.
Correct.
About American politics.
But that's decreasingly so thanks to social media, I think.
I say so, yeah.
I had this tweet, and I predicted it as night follows day, which is, if Biden is the nominee, we're going to have months of the corporate press engaging in increasingly blatant Weekend at Bernie shenanigans, trying to convince us that everything's fine as he starts wearing his pants on his head and shitting himself on stage.
God, he doesn't look good.
And 2 months later, The Atlantic goes, oh, the reason he can't talk is because he had a stutter as a kid. And now it's come back, and it's like, a stutter doesn't make you forget Obama's name.
That's not how that works.
And he even came out and said, "No, I don't have a. You're why? 40 years in the Senate.
I didn't see that piece.
Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
It's amazing.
Jeez.
But they got to explain it somehow.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna end up happening. I've gotten out of the political prognostication game,
dude. Hunter is a crackhead. wait, did you not know this? His son is a literal crackhead.
I know that his son has a history of drug.
No, it's crack, literally abuse. Crack.
I didn't know that he was using crack.
It was crack.
Yeah. That's unfortunate because crack is whack.
Crack
is cheap.
Camille, this was from the New Yorker, that far right-wing fringe conspiracy page.
Right.
Matt Gaetz read this on the House committee. Hunter got in shit because he was trying to buy crack from a homeless person in L.A. and he got robbed.
Yeah.
His Hertz car, when he pulled it over, they left the crack pipe inside.
Oh my God.
Everyone who's ever done drugs, you got to pull over the car. First thing, get the drug paraphernalia. This is very known.
Well, this is what makes his story of redemption all the more impressive. I mean, to go from crack dealer to Ukrainian business consultant, energy consultant, making millions of dollars. It's just so impressive. It's the sort of shit that you would expect in a Hallmark movie.
Horatio Alger.
I expect to see this film made at some point.
This is an Ayn Rand novel.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest men ever. And it's a pity that his father doesn't talk more about his son's extraordinary success. He should.
It's amazing.
He should, because he played such an important role in that success.
I tweeted that out. I go, guys, the comedic opportunity to have a president whose adult son is a crackhead in the White House. I want him doing crack in that side office where Bill Clinton was jerking off into the sink. We need this to happen. It smells like burnt plastic in here. Is it his hair plugs or is it the crack?
No, he does look like he's gotten his life together in some
Hunter?
respect. I think he married a woman that he knew for 2 weeks or something like that.
He was fucking his brother's widow.
Well, that was before.
Sure.
But, now he's a married man.
Yeah, but he just had a love child.
No, he just found out that the child.
No, but someone else is pregnant now.
Wait,
someone is currently pregnant. Yes,
but that might have been before he married his wife, though, because he only knew his wife for like 2 months.
Yeah. So which
is strange,
and that's
highly unusual stuff.
The important thing is we know that the president won't throw this in Biden's face.
Oh, he will. Oh, he will. Yeah. Gosh,
it's so good. Now that she's gone, it's all hilarious. Now that the only real danger is Kamala Harris, she's the only dangerous one, I think.
I mean, I suspect there are other dangers, though, because I know
not to her level of evil.
But I know you have significant concerns about the economic policy positions of, say, a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, or quite frankly, a Pete Buttigieg, which I don't understand. And perhaps you can explain it to me, like the libertarian fascination with Pete Buttigieg.
What? I've never heard this.
There is a thing. There's like libertarians for Buttigieg. There are libertarians who I know, people who support libertarian causes, who are enamored and fascinated with Mayor Pete. And it was early on, and perhaps that started to change because I know he's receiving a great deal more scrutiny now that the field is starting to dwindle, and because he'd become a bit stronger of a candidate. But I don't understand the fascination because so far as I can tell, he's Elizabeth Warren light. He occasionally talks about things in a way. He uses words like freedom.
Yeah.
But what he means when he says it is certainly not the same thing I mean when I refer to it.
I'm going to go full Alex Jones here.
Oh, boy.
Full Alex Jones.
Should I get under the table?
No.
Okay.
What?
Go ahead.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah. I just don't know if should I hide is what I'm asking.
There is no way you could tell me there isn't some conspiracy that a mayor of a town who no one can find on a map is now one of the top 3 at age 35, one of the top 3 Democratic contenders. That makes no sense to me.
What do you think is happening?
There's got to be something behind the scenes going on. This does not add up.
Like what? Behind the scenes?
Meaning some powerful people are pushing him.
Well, sure. I suppose that's always the case in electoral politics.
Not to this degree, with such a weak resume.
I mean, Barack Obama had a pretty weak resume.
Barack Obama was a national best-selling author.
I suppose that's true.
And that is not a minor accomplishment, and who was very known.
Yeah.
Buttigieg has nothing.
I mean, there's no reason he should have caught on, but he has caught on.
But this is unprecedented.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Something's going on.
Yeah. I don't know that anything is going on. I mean, I think unprecedented things happen, which is why we use the word.
But where do you even get the money to get that started? There's nothing about him that's particularly exceptional other than he's gay, but he's not even running on that heavily.
I think his national political ambitions are something that have been known to certain people, like
since he was in high school last year?
Circle. Well, since he's been in political office, he's had aspirations of running for president. I think his husband has talked about that in certain things that we've seen written.
Did you see the photos of him posing all sexily blue steel at the Holocaust Memorial in Germany?
No.
Oh yeah, the husband. He's just was like, oh, look at this hunk.
Oh, the husband is sexy.
No. The husband posted Pete looking all smoldering at the camera. And someone's like, is that the Holocaust Memorial? And it was. And we don't hear about it.
Maybe he wasn't trying.
No, it was total blue steel.
Trying.
It was total smoldering at the camera like this. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't hear about it because if this was a Republican, it would be like, oh my God, blah, 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 belittling the Holocaust. It's like that girl who took the selfie at Auschwitz.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Well, yeah.
You and I both have a very kind of skeptical view of politics in America.
Yes.
What are you most concerned will happen in 2020?
The one thing I'm most concerned about in 2020, Andrew Yang actually winning. I think it's a bad idea. I think it'd be terrible. I think there's like this Ready Player One world that would come into fruition. It's economically ruinous policy. And when you actually look under the hood at the various other things that he wants to do, beyond his appropriate concern about the fact that like NCAA players aren't treated fairly. I think when I look at him talking about like government boards with respect to journalism and all kinds of other stuff, he's got a lot of bad ideas. He's a nice guy. I could like him personally. In fact, I enjoyed sitting down and talking to him. But I think his ideas are really, really bad. And I think his pessimism about productivity and about innovation is something that I think is very attractive to a lot of people and sounds really smart, but is dead fucking wrong. And it bothers me. So I don't want him to catch on.
Did you not enjoy at least watching the Democratic presidential debates and seeing a Chinaman with a math?
I don't see color.
I don't see country.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wait, so Moynihan really doesn't like Trump, huh?
Well, is that surprising to you?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, because I think Moynihan is a critical thinker.
Okay.
And Trump is a sideshow. Mm-hmm. And I would think you would be like, all right, I get how this guy's an ass, but I get how this is also interesting and funny.
I mean, I think that the stock position of the various reasonable people I hang around with, and I share it in certain respects, is that Donald Trump is not only dim and poorly informed on most policy issues, like he's sort of dangerously stupid in ways that make him concerned, especially when he thinks about foreign policy. Like he worries about what might happen with a Donald Trump if there was actually some sort of a shooting war, that he has poor judgment. He doesn't have good people around him to advise him on what to do. And even when he looks at economic policy, I mean, I heard Moynihan on many occasions talk about like Trump's trade war with China and how fucking fundamentally destructive it is.
Agreed.
But I also suspect that Moynihan and Matt and pretty much everyone else I know who isn't you is a great deal more concerned, or me for that matter, a great deal more concerned about a lot of the everyday unsettling things that the president does that seem, quote, unpresidential.
Yeah.
And
Ronald Reagan never tweeted like this.
The denigration of the office, so to speak, the lack of respectability, the president's capacity to lie about just about anything, and in many cases, lie is like a weird word to use for someone who is just sort of
talking out their ass,
inflating their sense of importance, and sort of lying in a sort of systematic and predictable way that makes it pretty obvious.
Yeah.
No one has ever done this before. Nobody knew. Yes, you're right. Those things are lies, but that's also just the way he talks.
Right.
So I think there's probably some aspect of that. And when I sort of respond, well, guys, like we all know that they all lie. And we all know that in truth, like the things that he's telling lies about, some of them are really important. Some of them aren't.
Yeah.
All of the rest of them are expert liars. They're also inveterate liars about things that matter, things of great consequence. And to the extent they're making mistakes, they're often doing it behind this veneer of respectability.
Yes.
And if I'm going to have someone who's performing surgery that's likely to go badly, like, do I want them to look like a bumbling circus clown, or do I want them to have all the trappings of sort of an expert physician? And I'd prefer that they look like a bumbling circus.
You'd rather have Patch Adams than
my perspective.
You'd rather have Patch Adams than Mengele.
Yeah. So to the extent I say something like that, I suppose they understand the argument. They just disagree. They want to get back to some level of the sort of predictability that comes with a conventional candidate. My only issue with that argument, and it's odd. Actually, this is something I'd love to talk to you about. This is something I'd love to talk to you about.
Oh shit.
Like, I know that you and I know that there's a fundamental difference between the United States of America, right? And its particular enemies.
Oh,
like
yes,
the alliance of Russia, North Korea, and China.
Yes.
Like, just a fundamentally different thing.
Not even a question.
There's something that's worth preserving. Even an anarchist like me recognizes,
of course,
about the uniquely amazing American project. This flourishing of freedom that we are vehemently critical of in certain respects.
Yes.
But this flourishing of freedom, this mechanism for creating all of this wealth and prosperity that has improved the lives of so many people, it's extraordinary.
Yes.
It's great. I want to save that thing. I want to safeguard it. I want to make it better and better and better and better.
Yes.
I don't know that the way to do that, however, is to try and maintain the status quo when it comes to the imperial presidency and electing these people to office who are, generally speaking, sort of look respectable, but keep doing awful things, keep expanding the power of the office, and keep doing all sorts of other sort of small, awful things that kind of degrade the project in important ways and endanger the project in important ways. And I don't know. Actually, I guess there's not a question there. I just wanted to say that in a room with someone who kind of understood all of the aspects of it, because most of the time when I talk about this stuff publicly with anyone, it's in rooms where people have no idea what I'm talking about.
It is.
So because to say both things seems crazy, that you both admire and respect the project that is America and the uniqueness of it and the awfulness of its adversaries. And at the same time, there are things about the polity that you find completely reprehensible and that you hope will be destroyed.
Cancer is a part of the body.
Yeah.
But I hate the cancer.
Yeah.
Completely.
Sure.
And I regard it as a cancer. I don't regard it as like, oh, it's just a pimple. No, it's cancer.
Yeah.
And the other thing why what you're saying is important is it's not just in terms of government. It is very important to teach people, and this is something they're trained not to do since kindergarten, to have an enormous amount of skepticism for someone who's going to sit you down and tell you how to run your life. And even day to day, when people give you advice, you should be like, all right, I respect this person. It's thought-provoking. Let me think it through. And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. And I think a lot of people who have an amount of prestige, and I'm not saying this about Matt or Michael at all, want to be kind of, they're not comfortable with pushback. I get very dirty on social media. I get, just yesterday, some guy told me that I should be shot in the face. And his next tweet, but his next tweet is, I feel like a useless failure today. So I put them side by side and just wrote daddy issues. And it's just, and now his mentions are ruined and his day is ruined. Like it's such a wasp. The other thing is you and I are immigrants. So we've seen the other side. I think and this is a word that I'm going to use, I think there's a lot of privilege being born in America and taking a lot of shit for granted. Here's one example that has nothing to do with government. I had an issue with my faucet in the bathroom for a long time.
Okay.
And all my American friends are like, just basically like bitch to the landlord until he fixes it, right? And I'm like, you have to understand people in power will use that power in arbitrary ways, right? So I have to ask myself, since my rent is low, what are the odds that he's going to use this as an excuse to be like, oh, you have a problem with the faucet? Okay, I'm going to hire a plumber for $100. And now your rent's up $100 every month. But this is but they don't think in these terms. Americans think if something's a problem, you got to raise your voice and the problem be fixed. I'm like, people are very retaliatory. Yeah. People who have power use it in nasty, arbitrary ways. And Americans, being so free, don't think in these terms. And this is a big deal. And especially you also see it with the police. I mean, this whole kind of fairy tale about they have a job. It's a tough job. It's psychologically tough. You're dealing with people at their worst. I'm not arguing that. But how is that going to not fuck with your head?
Yeah. So something that I saw you tweet earlier today, actually, man who gets paid to lie complains about man who gets paid by liars. Yeah. The corporate press is the enemy of the people.
Yes.
Put that tweet into context for me.
Sure. So right now there is a campaign by the corporate press, which is 100% disingenuous and evil. Not two sides. This is pure lies. Facebook is running ads from political figures, right? And they're basically saying, you give us money, we run your ad. And the cathedral is saying, no, you have to vet these ads. Fact check them.
Yes.
First of all, the concept that it's a good idea for international corporations to be telling politicians what isn't true should at the very least be something to consider. And that, to me, even as an anarchist, is extremely disturbing to have Facebook be the arbiter of truth. Yeah. Number one. Second, what ads are ever fact check? If Bounty tells you it's the quicker
it's the best.
It's like, well, I don't know, man. We got to go to consumerreports.com.
Exactly.
It's insane.
Yeah.
The premise that even a stupid person or an ignorant person is going to look at an ad by a politician and be like, oh, this
obviously true.
Probably true. Is a lie.
Right.
So all of these things what I pointed out, the follow-up to that
tweet. Of course,
tweet.
Relatedly, what is political? Like, please someone tell me.
Right. Related to that is what's happening is for a long time, the cathedral, which is the universities, academia, and the media and entertainment in Washington, had a monopoly on discourse. They would set the terms and what the issues are and what the range of opinion is allowed. Yeah. Social media blew that wide open, call them out on their bullshit. One of the big examples of this, I always use this one, as opposed to Kavanaugh, is Jeffrey Epstein, where everyone's like an Emmy Rohrbach, which was just very disturbing when it was like we knew how all this stuff, but we killed the story. And this guy's a predator on children. And it's to kind of be like, all right, you are doing everything in your power so that people can't even pay their way to have alternative interpretations of the news. You are so desperate to be able to train the population. And increasingly and irrevocably, in my opinion, they're being called out for their mendacity. And my other quote is, the battle is won when the average American views a corporate journalist exactly as they view a tobacco executive. You are selling a product. You do not care about lives. And one day I'm going to write this book, which is a history of the corporate press's love affair with war. They can't get enough. During 2016, we were told every 5 minutes that Trump has such a temper, he's going to start nuking someone who's mean to him on Twitter. Remember that? And now we're told every 5 minutes that because we're not at war with China and Russia, this is somehow a problem. And there's no sense of what are we doing? Why are we pushing war? And the costs of war, financial and even lives. They're so. And look what they're doing. And the thing is, what's great is for a long time people thought, they have a bias toward the Democrats. If the press was just biased toward Democrats, it would be fine. How they're treating Bernie and Tulsi and Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is hardly a radical in any sense. Is in the sense of an Elizabeth Warren. I mean, he's got new ideas, but this is not someone who, if you sat down, you couldn't have a discussion about policy and who's an ideologue in that sense.
We've done that once, yeah.
Okay. So that is my point. Like, holy shit, these people, I have a good friend who's an anarchist. And for a long time, he's like, oh, I was exaggerating. Then he sat down and watched CNN and he's like, oh, truth does not, the thing over the weekend with the circle game. I thought that these cadets were jokingly giving the OK symbol as kind of a fuck you about white nationalism. I didn't realize this is a game that kids play. It was on Malcolm in the Middle. So they're lying. This is just like kind of like a punch buggy. So they're lying even about that. And they have and when Stephen Colbert is giving a Nazi salute on his show as a joke, that's fine. But if they're doing something as a joke, these people have to be destroyed. That's evil. You and I both have a very kind of skeptical view of politics in America.
Yes.
What are you most concerned will happen in 2020?
So the thing I'm most concerned about in 2020 is not having an opportunity to take a vacation, like at all. Like in the past year, I've been very, very tired. I've renovated a house and I've spent ungodly sums of money doing this unexpectedly, and I desperately need to get to a beach somewhere luxurious. I'm also really concerned about the fact that I'll probably have to fly coach to a couple of places like Hong Kong because I just had to spend a lot of my money.
Just put you in a kennel like a dog.
It's fucking awful. Like there is nothing worse than domestic American, like international air travel coach. Some of the international airlines aren't nearly as bad. But dear God, like every time I think about the fact, I'm going to Hong Kong in a couple of weeks, actually, and I have to get on a plane. I got to book my ticket today. And the difference between the coach ticket and the business class ticket is like $7,000 or $8,000.
I mean, I'm sorry. Rosa Parks was how many years ago? And now you got to sit in the back of the plane?
It's the worst shit. It's the worst shit imaginable. It's wrong. It's an injustice. More Americans should be concerned about it. I should never have to fly coach because it's traumatic for me. And my blackness ought to preclude me from having to do it. But here I am going through all of this again. And it's worse than what happened to Martin Luther King. That one time when they were listening in on him when he was,
making fun of rapes.
Well, I won't comment.
You know perfectly well that I'm currently wearing Heshi socks. HESHI socks.com. Promo code welcome30 gives you 30% off your order. They're super comfortable. In the ad copy, it uses the F word. We're not going to use that. We have class here at Gas Digital, people. Just like classy Heshi socks. They're made with this fancy high-end Pima cotton, which is very breathable, but they're also treated with antimicrobial properties to keep your feet fresh and smelling right. I wear them around the house. They're thick, but feel comfortable. Regular socks wear at the heel. They have a new line. They've got the ones for work. They've got the ones that have a little bit of edge to them. I like them. I swear by them. I love that they're a sponsor that I can easily promote. They've got the ankle socks, the basics, the fashion socks. If you go to heshisocks.com, HESHI socks.com, and use promo code welcome30, you're going to get 30% off your entire order. you are welcome.
So the one question I'd ask is, there seems to be...
Is this as close as I'm going to get to being in the fifth column again?
Stop it.
I'm not hearing
there
a no.
Seems to be... I'm telling you to stop it. There seems to be something with respect to an attribution of motive.
Yes.
In what you're saying.
Yes.
That I think is a place where I might draw a line and say, I'm not sure I can go that far. Because in my own experience dealing with people in corporate media, like I remember... I've talked to a lot of these folks. They generally believe they're doing good things.
Sure.
And generally don't believe that they're sort of responding to what their corporate paymasters want from them, or that they're being motivated by profits. I mean, the distance between these two entities, like big tobacco and big media, if I was to talk about that, is big tobacco, people imagine in their people's imaginations. And, you know, to the extent this is true is a whole nother thing. They hid information about how bad their product was for you because it was likely to kill you, and they wanted to sell you as much of it as possible.
The WMDs?
To keep you addicted and
The
stuff.
WMDs?
I'm talking about cigarettes.
I'm talking about the tobacco. I'm not talking about the media. Saddam's going to start
right,
nuking
and I'm
people.
saying, but here's what I'm saying about the corporate press. Like, generally speaking, I just think many of them are bad at their jobs, and quite frankly, their response to the fact that Donald Trump has become president of the United States and he's sort of exploding norms every day.
Sure.
They've gotten worse at their jobs in many ways. And I think that there is a great deal of fair and earnest criticism and ire and contempt that should be directed their way. I do worry, though, about getting into the sort of whole thing about casting motives, because my suspicion is that most of them mean well, and in much the same way that your project is to sort of go out into these dark places and talk to these people who have been condemned broadly by polite society, by the elite.
Is it your belief that if you, me, Milo, and Richard Spencer were just random four people were
that is a hell of a random four people.
That's gonna be a great buddy comedy.
Yeah,
but it's a Hogan's Heroes remake, but we gotta have a black guy now. Maybe there was a black guy in Hogan's Heroes. I remember.
Don't know.
If the four of us were vanished, do you think that they would regard this as a bad thing?
Banished in what way? Like, just from Twitter or from the universe?
From the universe.
Under what circumstances?
Taken away to some jail.
Well, I mean, I think people like me, so they might be sad that I was gone. They probably wouldn't weep for Milo or Richard Spencer. They would celebrate.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you have people who are willing to celebrate the destruction of their enemies, their ideological enemies, and again, Spencer, okay,
we just did a whole thing with Kamala Harris. I mean, I don't want her house to burn down. I don't actually want her to die, but I do want her political career to be over.
Well, I guess you and I disagree then.
What do you mean?
Well, I that's all I can say. I guess you and I disagree. Yeah, absolutely.
But you just said a moment ago, like, would they weep if something were to happen to us? And I mean, they believe what they're saying when they talk about people being sort of existentially bad, and when they engage in their categorical
so they're not bad at their job.
They're afraid of those people. I think
so. They do have an agenda.
They believe that their job is to tell everyone the unadulterated, objective truth. One, I mean, I think that task in and of itself is deeply problematic because it's not a thing.
Sure.
So that's a whole separate problem. But they believe that they're being earnest in their attempt to go and deliver this light of truth to people. They also believe that there are particular moral axioms that they have to champion, and en route to doing that, they draw lines at certain places, and they engage in the same sort of condemnations, those categorical condemnations that other people do. So when they engage with someone who they believe is racist, or the broad consensus is that this person is a racist and a monster, they'll conduct their interview as such, and they won't bother to make the case or to probe the case as to whether or not these condemnations are true, or even question whether or not the best way to deal with someone who has objectionable ideas and values is to simply castigate them and say your ideas are bad, versus to actually engage with them and to try and unpack what the hell is going on here.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, if Trump is Hitler light,
which he's not,
but let's pretend he is, right? which people are convinced. You have, in my view, a moral duty to find the right strategy to defeat him. You don't have the time to be self-indulgent and be tweeting. If you have this existential threat to people's lives, you really have to do what it takes, right? If you got to dress like a woman with a crowbar and slip past his guards, whatever, you got to do it.
Yeah.
Yelling at him that he was racist didn't work. So anytime you are still sticking to a strategy that didn't work when you have an existential threat, that's your moral failing, number one. Number two is, I don't think we're in disagreement. You are talking about my claim where that they have an actual agenda, which is to destroy certain people who they regard as racist. Their definition of racist is that who disagrees with me, or I don't like it, as you said earlier. And their goal is to spread truth. C.S. Lewis, I had that quote from him in the beginning of one of my chapters where he said, I'd rather be, I'm going to paraphrase it completely, I'd rather be under the control of a corrupt tyrant than someone who is a moral busybody, because the moral busybody, his conscience will never let him sleep, whereas the corrupt one, and he does so with the approval, he presses you with the approval of his own conscience.
Sure.
So it's absolutely the case that Alexander Hamilton, my great hero, one of the things that Jefferson was like flipping out, where he says the reason the British government Constitution is the best is because of the corruption. And he's like, oh my God, corruption is something you have to account for. When you were talking to people who regard themselves as morally pure, this is why I always say evangelical left. They are there, jihadis, to put forward their worldview. And there's no place on earth where you can go to escape them. And that is very, very dangerous. And that is an agenda.
No, I talk in much the same way, I think it's fair to say, about like the AOC sort of Bernie Sanders agenda is broadly perceived by the people who are enthusiastic about it as, I mean, this is just about fairness. It's about taking
another word, which means nothing.
The corporations and the rich, the 1% have, and spreading it around more evenly because, people can't afford healthcare.
Right.
That's not really what you're actually concerned about. And quite frankly, when you look at their policy proposals, the radical redistribution, the incredible reallocation of power between individuals and the state, I mean, it's unprecedented in ways that should be frightening to more people, but go unexamined because of their purportedly noble aspirations. I think it's much the same thing with the young girl who is the Time Person of the Year, who's
Greta Thunberg.
Me at the moment.
How dare you?
But exactly, I know. I was going to say like call her a chick, and that would have been even worse. But I think we're in broad agreement about the fact that there is a danger there that people aren't aware of. I think what I was trying to get at before is, to the extent people aren't aware of it and they don't respond in the way that you or I would to it, they're responding sort of as earnestly as they can. They think that the difference between, say, Bernie Sanders and Trump is profound in that Trump is dangerous racist monster. Bernie Sanders is amiable old guy who has some unusual ideas.
Right.
They don't refer to his ideas, Bernie's, as radical, as revolutionary.
Correct.
They revert to them as ambitious. It's an ambitious political agenda.
Right.
Does it mean that the state will have the ability to look into all manner of things with respect to your personal life, and that whole industries perhaps might disappear overnight while, again, authority and power and wealth is transferred from the state, from private individuals? Well, maybe, but for them, that's not threatening.
Right.
There's nothing terrifying about it. On the other hand, the evisceration of these norms that they value so much, the things that make them feel comfortable,
make them feel in charge.
Yeah, sure. That is far more frightening to them. And, I don't know.
You're not making your case very well, because you're making my case.
Well, I feel like we have the same case, but what I'm talking about is the motive that's being attributed to them. And when I see, the reason I ask you to talk about the tweet is because the corporate press is the enemy of the people. Like, I wonder how much of your tongue is in your cheek.
Zero.
When you say
Absolutely
that.
Zero.
Because I also know you to be a person who, and I think you do it in your book as well, you talk about like Richard Spencer and the fact that he gets punched in the face, and the manifestation of political violence in a context like that is something that makes you nervous.
I am absolutely against any form of violence or harm to journalists. 100%.
Yeah.
I don't think it's cute or funny.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good direction. I don't think it's good strategically. I think it's reprehensible morally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Politicians are different. When you are using the state to ruin lives, that is a different situation, in my opinion.
Okay. You've explained your perspective. That's good.
Yeah, as well as I can. I mean, I've been reading my Emma Goldman. So. Yeah, I think there is a big difference between I have ideas and I'm deceptive and I get paid to deceive, as opposed to I'm taking a young person who is probably stupid, who grew up poor, who didn't have much of a chance, is a low quality person, and I'm going to lock him up with murderers and rapists. This is not similar to me at all. And I will use that to further my ambitions. I mean, that is vampirism.
That's a fair point. And I actually think that's a very accurate description of one person's resume.
And that's why I think she's so much worse than the others, because I can wrap my head around everything that Bernie does. I don't think and I think Bernie, hates wealth and so on and so forth. Bernie Sanders, I'm making the case for Bernie, wasn't even a Democrat for many years because of his principles. He's like, I don't have traditional Democratic views. I'm going to be an independent. That says a lot. Yeah. It's a lot easier to run. Elizabeth Warren, I think, in my opinion, and I'm very curious to hear what you have to say, I think Trump broke her brain. I don't think she believes this reparations bullshit. How are you 70 and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, slavery? Oh shit, well, we should give black people money even though the math doesn't make sense in any level.
I don't think Trump broke her brain as much as that's where elite opinion is. No.
He broke her brain.
She's run there.
I'll tell you how he broke her brain.
Okay.
Oh, this is easy.
Okay.
During the campaign, he goes, if she takes a DNA test, I will give $1 million to the charity of her choice.
Oh,
she takes the DNA test. She goes, here, Donald Trump. He goes, who cares? He literally said, who cares?
Yeah.
And it's like, holy shit.
Well, you never take the bait. You don't do that.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know to what degree that's just psyops and to what degree it's sloppiness and it's Trump doing Trumpian things.
That's the question.
One can't tell.
Right.
But in either case, the way that she's responded to that probably ought to be disqualifying. But I just want to get her disqualified. So I'm a little biased.
It's just also funny that this woman, it's easy to make fun of her. She was a Harvard professor. Being a Harvard professor correlates extremely well with intelligence, right? She has, changed her political views over the years. Sure. I do think there's an element of sincerity to that. Not in recent times, but over, whatever. She's bright, right? And she is, when she's being herself, there's a charisma there. When she's not in campaign mode, she obviously, I think, very sincerely cares about poor people and how they're screwed over by banks and credit cards. I think that's extremely sincere. So to watch someone who has had cred, who is basically in her mind, in some ways factually, fought the good fight, being reduced to a laughing stock, this is why I defend Rosie O'Donnell. I say, listen, if your bully became the president, wouldn't you have a break with reality also? Like the guy who shoved you in the locker is in the White House now. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah. No, it's weird.
It's
weird.
It's weird.
But I wonder about the reality of a Harris presidency versus a Warren presidency. And imagine that they're actually successful in achieving their policy goals. I don't actually know what Harris would actually try and achieve while she's in office.
Let me interrupt you. And I'll tell you one
I don't
thing
know that I do.
Yes, you do.
I actually believe that Elizabeth Warren is probably she is more committed to the economic policy agenda, for example, she articulated than Harris was, because Harris had a sort of fluid attachment to these things. One day she wants to eliminate all insurance companies, and the next day it's like, it's a bridge too far.
I'll give you in one sentence, and you're going to agree with me.
Okay.
Of the two, I don't think it's going to be even close. Who would be easier to be goaded into war by the media?
Oh, yeah. Well, sure.
It's not even close.
Yeah. I mean, that much is true.
Warren would sit down, like you were saying, Trump with advisors. She would actually have bright people around her. She would take that issue very seriously. And Harris would do the Hillary thing. I got to look tough. I got to look strong. Boots on the ground. Who cares if we're killing people overseas? I'm going to be Margaret Thatcher in the Falklands. I don't think it's even close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing with Bernie. Same thing with Budaj.
Yeah.
Especially someone who's a veteran. I don't think they take that stuff lightly at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the frothing at the mouth that Trump isn't sending us everywhere and is pulling back our the American empire. That to me,
pulling back.
Well, to some, he's at least
rhetorically in some instances, but sure,
that's a big deal.
That's a big deal
to have that on the
that's
table.
An improvement. Yeah.
To have that in mainstream Republican thought, the concept that we don't have to be the policeman in the world is such a glorious moving of the Overton window. Meghan McCain, who I'm chums with, and I think she gets a bad rap in many ways because whatever.
Yeah, no Meghan and her husband.
Yeah, to have her flipping out every day because we're not, like in New Zealand, is wonderful.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I do wonder, though, in much the same way that conservatives had this rhetorical commitment to limited government and a rhetorical commitment to restricting spending and doing something about the deficit, a rhetorical commitment that they've all but abandoned at this point anyways, but were never actually concerned about those things in principle, I presume, or at least never did anything about them when they had the opportunity to. I wonder what the net effect of that is. If it's beneficial to the cause of people who are actually concerned about those things, to have people in office who aren't actually serving those ends, but talk about them frequently, I don't know how beneficial that is. And in the same way, I wonder how beneficial it is to have a Donald Trump in office who frequently talks about non-interventionism and underscores the stupidity of certain kinds of conflicts,
the costs.
But doesn't actually do anything to materially unwind certain circumstances.
But this is this is the process.
But I wonder if that's on net sort of a good thing, or if it has a similar kind of bad impact.
To have,
because I think we denigrate the cause of limited government when you have people who are trumpeting it but never actually doing anything about it.
To have Republicans be amenable to the idea that prisoners should be treated better.
Yeah.
And that people, let's look at this even from an economic point of view.
Yeah.
Is glorious.
Yeah.
And of course, the corporate media doesn't even talk about this because it was bipartisan.
Yeah.
And I'm more than happy to give as much credit to whoever takes it.
Sure.
The fact that
Kim Kardashian deserves most of the credit.
Oh, you got me all triggered.
Yeah.
You've got me all triggered.
I'm sorry.
Because you're talking about the evil of the corporate press and whether these people are bad people.
Uh-huh.
She saved a woman's life. And we saw the footage of that woman and her family crying hysterically. And if you look at this and you start laughing and snickering, you are a moral abomination. When you save one life, then you can talk to me.
Yeah.
And it's so depraved to me to find humor. There's humor in the ironic that it's Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
But to look at this as anything other than beautiful and glorious, this woman had no hope. Neither you and I have been to jail. I had Ross Ulbricht's mom in here. He's got life without possibility of parole.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like in solitary.
Wow.
Jail is not even house arrest.
Yeah.
But this is jail.
Yeah.
For you to be like, fuck.
Well, you know I wasn't kidding just now when I mentioned Kim. I think Kim should have gotten Person of the Year several years in a row. Kim is among the most consequential people in America, especially when it comes to criminal justice reform, what she's been able to achieve legislatively. And I give the achievement to her in particular because she, along with some other folks like Van Jones, was willing to talk to the president who everyone said was untouchable, which gives you some indication of what might be possible. Trump was supposed to be a law and order guy who was all about the cops and law enforcement, and he and his administration were in power.
And Jared.
Happily signing into law a piece of legislation that is the most profound and sweeping form of criminal justice reform that we've seen in multiple decades.
You bring up a name.
Yeah.
It's funny because everyone thinks the other side is always a monolith. Van Jones is one of the people on the left who gets it a lot because he was a former communist. The commies, I don't think, for a lot of people on the right, the commies hate Hillary more than you hate Hillary. Like the level of hatred that they have for someone who's taken leftism and made it into a vehicle for both Wall Street and war is... The apoplexy can't be overstated. So he very often is like, of course, a lot of times he's like a lefty part of the line, but he very often is like, all right, this is nonsense. That's not what's going on here. So I have a lot of respect for him. And I think anytime you have someone who is being unorthodox, I appreciate that a lot. Whoopi Goldberg gets a lot of shit. She's a hard leftist. She talks to right-wing people all the time. She's against the estate tax. I give her credit.
Well, for obvious reasons, she's against the estate tax, but that's fine. Reaching the right conclusion on that still gets you points.
But she also uses the right reasoning. She goes, I've already been taxed on it as income tax. Why am I getting taxed again because I died? Doesn't make sense. It's mine. I paid my taxes. But that's fair.
I agree. Okay. Obviously.
We are running out of time.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite part of this interview?
That's easy, Malice. Me. I mean, I like you and everything, but me.
You are welcome.